Good evening, everybody. I am Karin Jordaan, and this is the Grief Support online group, which has been created for a time such as this to support you in the process of your own grief, your own story at the beginning of 2021, which, as everyone will know, follows on to a year which saw the world turn upside down with COVID-19. Tonight, I would like to share a brief overview with you and let you understand and get a bit more familiar with what to expect as we go along. I've had people contact me with questions about the grief support group, and I know that it is, especially in times of grief, very difficult to express how we feel. And sometimes there is a fear of being in a group with other people. You might have a fear of breaking down emotionally. You might have a fear of being judged by someone else. Most of all, we need security, and we need comfort, and we need a safe space. This is what the grief support group is all about. It is a safe space that is created in confidentiality, as far as that is within our control. And there are a few pointers that I want to share so that you can feel comfortable with your choice that you make to either refer someone to this group or to join it yourself. And I'm going to share a few important points with you now. So allow me a second to just screen share with you and go through these points. What can you expect to happen every second Monday evening and 7 o'clock? I will welcome people to the group, and all that you need to share is your name, your surname, and perhaps the area that you're from. If you are from overseas, you can share the country that you're from. I prefer people not remaining anonymous for the simple reason that it does create a sense of awkwardness for people who are here in their vulnerability. One of the important questions that come up that people ask me is, do I have to tell you all the details of what happened which resulted in a loss for me, why I am grieving? No, I want to put your mind at rest that you don't have to, or no one is going to expect of you to share a lot of information. The other question that comes up most is people ask me, do I have to say anything? The answer is no. This support group is there for you to hear how other people feel similar to you, as well as giving you the opportunity to share your own grief, because you have a need to speak to people who understand how it feels. It's a very lonely place to be in when we experience a deep sense of grief, or we are experiencing different phases of our grief, and at that time family or friends perhaps haven't gone through this, and they find it very difficult to understand what we really feel. So these are the two legs of this grief support group, and the two legs I stand on. You can be here and you are welcome to just listen and find some solace and some comfort in the fact that you are actually listening to people who feel what you feel. If you don't have the freedom to share anything, that is fine. There might be an evening where you do join and you do have a need to share something or to ask a question, a burning question, and then that will be up to you. Then there are people who ask about confidentiality. How much of that is in our control? First of all, our sessions are not recorded and they will not be shared. Do we expect from each other to be respectful of our privacy? Yes. And in any scenario, in any setting, whether it's physical or it's online, if we were together in a group, we need not know each other personally, but we respect this journey that we are on, trying to get through the very difficult stage in our life caused by a loss that we have experienced. And in that, we just ask each other to respect our confidentiality. Whoever wants to speak is free, and also the support will be there in terms of answering your question or referring you to some information about the specific phase of grief that you are in. As you can see on the screen, at about roughly 10 to 8, I'm going to just open the floor for questions. If there is 1 or 2 questions that can be answered, just so that you know your questions will be accommodated. And at 8 o'clock, we should then be closing off. What is the difference between group support, facilitation, and private counseling? In this group, in any group, there is room for people to speak and for people to listen. I, as a trauma facilitator and grief counselor, will be supporting the entire group by facilitating the person who is sharing and facilitating the process between the person and the group and myself. Private counseling is available. There have been questions from people who are not comfortable with joining a group. You're very welcome to book a private counseling session. What happens in a private counseling session is we ascertain and assess where you are in your stages of grief. And then a personal journey is available for you. In a grief support group, it is important for everyone to understand that you have a safe space, a room, whether virtual as we are now, to share the load and the burden and the pain in your heart and mind. And to have that accepted and received within a safe supporting space. Is this a membership group? No. All these sessions are completely free, and whether you join once off to see if this is a space that can work for you, or whether you join regularly until you feel you have come to a place of acceptance, or that you are comfortable handling your grief on your own as you go along. That is up to you. Whether you join 1, 2, or 3 sessions, and maybe after 6 months you find that you are really going through a difficult stage of your grief, which you may not have expected, and you thought you'd be perfectly fine, being able to function on all levels. If you find that you are battling with your functionality, whether at work or at home, you're welcome to just join in another session. A question that came up this week was, am I allowed to join this group or sit in on a session if I have experienced something other than the death of a spouse or a loved one? Yes, we will be talking about the different forms of grief, not necessarily the phases, but the fact that you are grieving the loss, the deep loss of something in your life, if not a specific loss of a person. When we experience loss in the form of a family structure after a divorce, we might hit a phase where we are depressed, or where we find that we cannot mentally and emotionally and socially function properly. So we were on autopilot for a while, and then things just became too much. There is support for you here. If you are a survivor of a family structure where there has been suicide, there will be support for you. If you are experiencing any other major loss in your life, you are welcome to be here. This is not a space where you as a person or your grief gets diagnosed. Definitely not judged. Rather, this group is about exploring your own personal story and helping you to deal with that immense amount of grief that has overtaken you, if that is how you feel. You might be experiencing grief not on an emotional level, and you might not feel emotional, but you might feel very angry. You might feel extremely rejected or abandoned because of the person's sudden death. It doesn't matter which experience or label you put on the phase of grief that you're experiencing. It is legitimate. What does matter is that you are accepted and received at that point where you are in this group, and that we help you to find some form of clarity about how to move forward. How long does it take? Most of the phases of grief. Sometimes there is a compounded grief. We will also talk about compounded grief in other sessions. Compounded grief can cause the experience and the phases of grief that you are moving through to become longer, even 3 to 5 years. And most importantly, grief is a personal experience. And if we, at any stage, get stuck in a phase, it can also take longer for us to get to a point where we are recovered in our functionality. It's never about getting over your grief. It's always about recovering a measure of functionality so that you can experience life without that debilitating sense of loss of control or a debilitating sense of overwhelm. Getting to a point where you know what is happening to you, you understand better what grief is all about and how it happens to us as people. And if you're a parent, for instance, battling now with the demands of small children within your environment and all their needs that need to be taken care of, while you're actually also trying to take care of your own needs, suffering through grief, it helps to understand what those phases are. And it helps to be supported so that you know you're not functioning the way that you think you should, or you know you should, or you want to, but you will get there. You will get there. And the most important part of this is hearing from other people that it's okay to feel out of control. It's okay to feel at the moment that things are too much, that you are overwhelmed. It's even okay to feel that you're not feeling grief. You're not feeling sadness. You're not feeling the things that people say or expect you to feel, because that also happens. And then I would just want to point out one very important thing, and that is feelings of guilt. Depending on what has happened, any one of us can experience a sense of guilt for different reasons. And to really find a safe space where you trust people enough, although you don't perhaps know them even personally, but you trust this space to be able to say, I feel burdened by guilt because I think that I should have. And then you finish that sentence. The sense of relief that we get just from being able to share about our own guilt breaks an enormous mountain down into a molehill. Usually, whatever it is can be broken down into pieces and dealt with. And what happens to you then as a person? You start to become more realistic. Perhaps you were judging yourself much too harshly, and perhaps you were finding it very difficult to see your own humanity, your own brokenness, your own vulnerability within all that you expected of yourself. And you may even find the grace to forgive yourself. And why not? Let us help you with that.